back in the studio, and I'm going to change gears a little today. I've been working on the wood grain series for quite a while, and I have the wonderful opportunity to do 3 shows again this year. Remember, that happened in 2023. Luckily, this year they're not all bunched up. My thought considerations are, will one show be done before the other in case I want work from one show to go in another? And in this case, they will. So my focus right now is on getting several small pieces up for sale in the shows. As you know, the majority of my work is very large, and although people really enjoy looking at it, many people don't have the rooms in their home for the large pieces, and maybe don't have it in their budget to purchase them. So I've got a lot of unfinished pieces, and this one you may recognize. I showed you the other day. This one's in a really nice walnut drop-in frame. So we're going to work on this one. I'll put the frame aside. I like this cold wax painting. It reminds me of Moby Dick. It reminds me of deep, cold seawater. The thing that I don't like about this is the complexity of the color. It's fairly monochromatic. I think I can make those blues a little more exciting. So that's what we're working on today. I'll meet you over at the workstation. Okay, you can set up a cold wax station very easily, very quickly. It's not encaustic. You do not need heat. Cold wax is almost like Crisco is how I describe it. It's beeswax, it's some polymers, it's some resins. It has a little bit of an odor, but not much. So I'm using this indoors. Its windows are not open. I have, some pretty good ventilation in here. But it's not like using oil paints with solvents where you really need a lot of ventilation. And it certainly isn't like using encaustic. So I have a very large plexiglass sheet for a palette. I have some Mezemeister bowl scrapers in a variety of sizes. Palette knives. These are the ones I like, about this size, either rounded corners, or up top you can see it's rounded. This one is square, and that works just fine too. I discourage things like this. It's too big, it's sharp. I use this to get the wax out of the can. I use a gallon can of cold wax. So avoid these on your painting. And then I have a variety of brayers. These are soft brayers. And I've got those within my reach up here. Paints over here. I pulled out what I thought I might need. And this is a handy little gadget. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's a crimper. So it helps you to get the last little bit of paint out of the tube by crimping the tube. It's like a toothpaste squeezer. And then all my good paint is up at the top. So what I feel is the good qualities of this painting are, I like this diagonal composition going up and up. I think the composition's really nice. It has some beautiful texture already. It's almost a sandy-like texture. Here it's like I've scraped down, so it sort of feels like water going down, like maybe the if this were a whale. It's like taking a dive down. So I usually make up a story in my mind about what it is I'm painting. It's abstract. And rather than just throwing down a bunch of colors, which I usually do only at the beginning, I start honing it in. And I say things like, where would the background be? And in this case, it's the dark blue areas. This would be the subject, the focal point, the object. And this is a midground here. And this is a background. Now, a lot of times I think of the bottom of the painting, and in this case, this is the bottom, as being closest to me. And this area, because it's closer, I would generally make it darker. And I'm willing to change the story on a dime if something else presents itself to me. It's just kind of a little working game that I play with myself. It seems to work pretty good. So those are the things I like about it. And what I don't like about it is the colors are generally too cold. There's not a lot of contrast. We have a little contrast here, a little bit up here. Not quite enough contrast. The quality of the paint is okay. I like to make sure that they're not real thin and, just give them a once over and that's what they are. So what could I do to add a little bit of warmth, maybe depth, maybe contrast, and maybe not all those three at once? As I was choosing my paints, I found a beautiful tone that's called plum gray. I'm going to start with plum gray because you have to start somewhere. And I do love that color. Do I want to mix that with something, get a little, this is called brown pink, and it's a gambling color. I think I'm going to mix the plum gray with the brown pink. Let's see what we get. So I'll mix the color first, and then I'm going to add 50% wax to it. Let's see what we're getting here. Oh, that's lovely. And now I'm going to grab about 50% wax and just add it to this. And I think I'm going to add a little bit more of the brown pink. I don't have to add any more of the wax because I did take a little bit more than 50% of what I'm working with. So that's an interesting color. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Messmeister scraper and I just kind of cut it in and tip it about 45 degrees and just pull, 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 pull. What I'm trying to do is load up the scraper. And I'm gonna go into this area and just scrape a little of that on. Maybe it needs it up here a bit. feeling like I need a little bit more of a brilliant color. It's feeling just a little neutral to me. It's not really adding the spark or the pop that I was hoping for. So I'm going to get my brown pink, and then I have an earth brown in here. You don't have to get it right the first time. I can struggle with this for days or weeks, and the thing is, with the cold wax, your struggle is just going to make it all that much more textural and exciting. This also I'm finding a little dull, but we're going to give it a try. That's a little better, isn't it? That's a little better. I think I'm going to go white up here. That doesn't mean I can't put red. I can put the red and then later go over it with the white. So right now I'm just scraping this color on. This is a work in process, so I do have quite a lot of beautiful layers built up. So my texture is built in. Oh, should I go all the way across? Let's do that. And then we're going to try going over that with a little white. Okay, so one thing is I just started in on this totally dry. This painting's been sitting around for many months. What you can do is you can try to kind of activate what you have by putting cold wax over it. And let's do that, say up here. Let's just take the plain cold wax and let's scrape some cold wax across it just to kind of reactivate that surface. It's taken a lot. It's thirsty. I'm even going to just rub that in. That's interesting. I had a little something on my glove, and just that is giving a tint of warmth that I really like. Right here. So let's get that rubbed in. What if I take a little bit of this? Ooh, beautiful. Nothing says you can't use your fingers. I've got gloves on, why not? That's beautiful. Ooh, excellent. Cold wax, it always surprises me. Things happen that I never expected, or I do things that I don't know why I did them, but you know, that's looking pretty good. Now, in the areas that I've gone down with the color, although there's texture, like I said, what would happen if we take a little tissue paper, just regular tissue paper, probably got a lot in your Christmas gifts. I'm going to crinkle it, put it on top of that, and I'll grab one of my brayers and just brayer it on. That's interesting. Now I'm getting additional texture. Then I can take what I have on my tissue paper and I can transfer that to another spot. And that's a different kind of a mark, a different kind of a transfer. I liked that finger work I was doing. I've never done this before. But what if I decide to finger paint into that? I just kind of lost the texture that I put on, and what I'm gaining is color. See, if I scrape down to my diagonal line and then stop at the line and pick up the scraper, I get my line back. Here I've created a new line. And if I don't want that in, I'm going to have to scrape it out, rub it out. I could leave it be anyway. You can see the painting is changing. It's certainly getting a little warmth. How much warmth I want, hard to say. Because, you know, my story about the icy ocean, that could change. Maybe it'll turn into a jungle. Okay. This is the titanium white. Let's put a little of that down. And this is a little of the zinc white. The lids were stuck on both of these tubes. So when I'm painting, I like to keep a little pair of slip joint pliers. They adjust to very large or much smaller. This is great for getting your lids off your tubes. Okay, so this is the titanium. It's almost feeling like a cold cream you might put on your face. And this is the zinc. I don't know if the camera can really pick up the difference, but the zinc is quite a bit more transparent. So I've got them both down. I can use either one. And I want to go over this red area with white. Maybe I want to go over it with blue also. Let's go over this red with the white, and then this area here, let's go over that with a blue. And that's not going to, basically we're keeping the integrity of the picture for now. That'll probably change. So we're just adjusting colors to make the colors more luscious. I do that. I look at my cold wax work, and, you know, sometimes I get thrilled and think I'm done. And I come back, and within a couple of days, a couple of weeks, it's like, it's not quite as brilliant as I would like it. So, got the titanium here. I want this small Mezemeister scraper. So I'm just going to take what I have off with my palette knife. Boom. And save it here. I use a lot of paper towels. And I'll scrape my palette knife too. Okay, so I'll start at the line and I'm going to scrape it away from the line. And see, it's interesting to me that in cold wax, you can go right over a dark color with a light color. Oh, I've got a hair in my painting. How did that happen? Get out of there. Okay. Let's use a little zinc down here. I think I've got quite a lot of wax and not as much white. Let's add a little bit more white to our mixture. And I'm gonna scrape my red off. And finish. Now, what's interesting is I'm going to leave some of the red there. So, it's pretty nice. Now, what I want to do is I want to take some earth pigment or powdered pigments. I will take a little earth pigment. This is a dark yellow ochre earth pigment. And what I'm going to do, there's a few things you can do with this. You can mix it with wax and put it on. It tends to be quite transparent. Or you can sprinkle it. So I'll just get a little bit on my knife and boom, boom, boom. I can get some into this more neutral area too, because remember we put the wax, so it'll have something to stick onto. After I put the earth pigment, I'm going to need a wax paper. And this wax paper is going to kind of grind the pigment into the wax. So, oh, that's pretty nice. Now I've got a lot of white and earth pigment left, and I think I'm going to use that here. Let's see what we get. It's hard to stick to that original story because so many other stories are developing as I work into it and get some different effects. This up here, I think, is a little thick, the powder. So I'm gonna, let's use the same scraper with our white and just lightly scrape over it. What's happening is I'm scraping back into the red, as you can see, as I go lightly, and it's turning into a brownish red. Okay, so I'm not crazy about these scraper marks. Luckily, I have a whole cart of texture makers on my right, and one thing I really like to use is sea sponge. So what if I just dab the surface with the sea sponge And this sea sponge is getting all the way back down into the original blues I had on the bottom. I'm liking it. That's really nice. Really beautiful. Okay. Now, I'm going to very delicately scrape over that. Oh, get some beautiful marks, and I'm going to hold these up to the camera in a minute. Absolutely gorgeous. Always surprising. Oops. I want you to see that as best I can show it to you. Things are changing around here. Oh, that's fairly lovely. Suddenly I have a horizon line up here. Okay, this is really getting interesting in here. And I thought I'd put some blue back over those original orangish red marks I made. I'm going to mix two blues, I think. This is some anthraquinine blue. It's some really strong color. So you just need a dab. And that almost has a little turquoisey feel to it. And I want to get phthalo blue to mix in with that. Yeah, I think this is phthalo. If you're like me, you start fingerprinting all of your paint tubes and they're hard to read. Sometimes I take a little cold wax and smear it on the label just so I can clear up my name and see what am I really putting down there. I am going to take my white paint, scrape it up, set it on the edge down here. That'll give me something to use later. I can see my wax has a little white in it. I'm going to use that with the blue. That'll lighten the blue up just a touch. Load up my Mezemeister scraper and going over the red with the blue. A little too solid. Gonna take my sea sponge, get some texture in there, and I'll also get back through my layers a bit. You can try your skewer. I like these. Scrape a little in there. Gently go over that. I'm not at all satisfied with this blue. Not at all. You see how beautiful and translucent this blue is here? And this is so solid. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reactivate my white. I've allowed some of the color that was on my scraper to stay, so I'm not a bright white. Let's see how I might adjust that with some warm white. Let's try the tissue paper up here. See, I have some paint on my brayer, and I just got some paint here. Oh, that's pretty interesting. So I got a mark that I like pretty well, but I'm going to fool with it. I'm going to take one of the scrapers and just ever so lightly scrape over it. Nice, very nice. And that's just giving me a little softer look, rather than, you don't want people to say, oh, she used a piece of tissue paper and that's how she got that mark. You kind of want to cover your tracks with your mark making. Now I'm going to get some gold powdered pigment and put that over here and get a little shimmer in there. This is a Sennelier dry pigment, yellow gold. Be careful with dry pigments. I like to use the earth pigments. I'm not quite as worried about the earth pigments, but when you start getting into powdered pigments in colors like cadmiums, those could be extremely toxic. Always wear a respirator mask with those. I try to avoid them. Personally, I just try to avoid them altogether. Now, sometimes when I'm using this gold, which I love, I'll kind of put it on. I sprinkle it on. That's beautiful. Now, what I do is I blow it across the surface. Now, if I don't want it here, I can take one of my scrapers and just ever so lightly scrape it off. Decide what I want to scrape off and what I want to leave on. That's getting to be far more complex than it was before. My story is changing. I'm not as much seeing Moby Dick, and that's fine. I think I want a cold, bright white up here. So I'm going to take this blended white off of the scraper. I want to get a fresh start with my whites. So I'm going to use a little of the zinc white. Put it down there. Get my cold wax. Now you can see the difference between this white, which is very cold, and this white, which is warm. And I said I wanted some cold white up here. So, whoops, look at that. I just contaminated it with glue. Okay. Sometimes I like these thick edges, and I might choose to leave that there. As you start building up texture, when you scrape over the texture, you get different textures, which is the beauty of really building up your cold wax. I think there's a temptation to stop too quickly. Ooh, now that is giving me something I like. Beautiful. Oh. You have to be willing to abandon your ideas and listen to what the painting itself is telling you that it wants. It's like, well, you made a commitment, let's go for it. Let's do this together. What's going through my mind is, do I want to break that horizon line up there, or do I want to keep the horizon line? I'm running out of white sometimes. Sometimes that determines my decision. It's like, oh, paint's running out. I guess I'll do something else. Horizon lines tend to indicate landscape. And I find if you really want to make something very abstract, sometimes if you eliminate the horizon line, it becomes a little bit more abstract. So now we're committed to change. I don't know what we're going to get. I'm just going to now at this point try to abandon my thoughts, and I'm going to just work with the paint and see what we get. And we'll just do that by working back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I'm always amazed and surprised at some things that happen with cold wax. I'm quite a bit more in control with acrylics and water-based paints. I can predict the outcome a little more. So this is what attracts me to the cold wax, the unknown and the willingness to work with the unknown. So that's it for now. I may stay and work a little longer, see what happens, and get back to you in a day or two and show you what I found, what I discovered. The main point is working back into a cold wax painting. You can A, work back in when it's completely dry and you don't have to reactivate the surface, or B, put a layer of cold wax on it and reactivate the surface. It's up to you. One of the advantages of reactivating the surface was it became a little more receptive to the powdered pigments I was using. The earth pigments and the gold pigment stuck to it. Whereas if I had just gone in with the dry, it would not have stuck. So that's one thing. Think about your contrasts. Think about your textures. And when I talk about contrast, I'm not only talking about dark and light. I'm talking about the contrast of texture. So if you've got a very, very complex texture, make some of the areas smooth. Give yourself variation and contrast. It's a lot of fun. Okay, I am going to be doing a Tuesday afternoon cold wax group where I invite you to come into my studio on Tuesdays and we will work together with cold wax. It will be 5 weeks starting in I think it's mid-February. So if you're in the area, if you're in the Bay Area, the San Francisco area, keep it in mind. I'd love to have you join me and discover cold wax together. So go to your studio, make a mess, do something that surprises you. You don't have to know what the outcome's going to be. Painting is a practice. Practice makes perfect. It will be interesting to see what we get in a couple weeks, a couple days time. I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm willing to follow along with the paint itself. Okay? Take care.